Today, I'm going to talk about two of my favorite topics within Laravel. One is validation rules, and two is testing. And I'm going to show how I test validation rules, but I'm actually going to highlight one rule that it is impossible to write a failing test for, but why I still think it's a useful rule to have in your application. So let's take a look at some code. Here is a very simple form request. It just has one field in it, and it's a required field. It has to be a string, and it has a maximum length. All right, so I'm going to show what those tests, again, very basic tests would look like in my application. So here's a success test. I'm supplying a phone number. I'm posting it to that endpoint, which I just have at /demo, and I'm going to say it's okay. Then what I like to do, and this makes a little bit more sense when you have a larger form with multiple fields and multiple sets of rules, but I actually organize these by rule. A lot of people I see organize this by field, and I like this approach better. So just run with me here. So for required rules, I can just send in an empty payload, and then phone number, I'll get this specific message. So what this proves to me is not just that validation is failing for the phone number field, but I know which specific rule is failing, in this case, the required rule. And I know that because of the message. Same thing with string. In this case, I got to pass in something that's not a string. Well, an array is not a string, and I even like using kind of a silly value like that to make it clear what's going on. And I can make, another strong assertion that I know the string rule is failing here. And then same exact thing for too long, which is our max rule. I had that rule at 255. So if I make this 256 characters long, it's going to fail with that exact error message. So if I scroll back up to the top, click here, run my tests, they all pass. All right. What if I don't want this field to be required? So let's just say I remove that rule. Okay. And then what I should be able to do is I should be able to copy this test. Let's create another version of that. We'll call it empty form, right? And so I should be able to just get rid of this payload and run that. I'm going to run that one test, and it still passes. Okay. That's good. This isn't actually how HTML forms work though. What would normally happen is I would have like this is the payload that the browser would send. Right, so let's pretend the phone number field is visible on the page. It's not marked as required, so the browser isn't going to require me to type something in. And my rules say it's not required. It's going to submit an empty value, which is the empty string. And then we know Laravel, if you have the default middleware in place, it's going to convert that to a null value. But I'm going to just pass it in as an empty string because that's how the browser would submit it. This test is going to fail now, right? It's going to fail because it's like, hey, you got to give me a string. Well, that is a string, but remember, it converts it to null. So very often, and now I'm getting to the rule I wanted to talk about, we will do this, nullable, okay? So now if I come back here, this rule will pass, or this test will pass, empty will pass, and submitting a value will pass. The only thing on here that's going to fail now is this validation required, right? I don't have that rule anymore. So here's what I want to show. A thought experiment. What value, what payload could I construct that would make this test pass with something like the phone number field must be nullable? I'm making this up. Laravel does not emit that error message. If you think about this for a second, there's literally no payload I could submit that would make this fail, right? So if I run, it's going to fail, and it's going to say, hey, you said I was going to get errors. I'm not getting any errors. Same thing here. Like if I come in and I give it a phone number and I set it to null, still going to fail. If I set it to empty string, still going to fail. If I give it a value, still going to fail, right? There is literally nothing I can do to make the nullable rule fail. And if you look at nullable, like if I click into this and we go look at what the framework is doing when this rule is implemented, it's just returning true. It's not testing anything. And you can even see in the comment here, it's literally just saying, hey, it should pass if it's null. This always returns true. It just lets us put something in our rules to make this a visible requirement of the form. And so that's kind of my point, is this rule in some cases doesn't really do anything. Now, in the case I gave where you are submitting an empty HTML input and it's going to convert that string to null, like without that rule, it would fail. But let's say you have a more dynamic UI where the field is just hidden. It's not present at all. This wouldn't fail. You wouldn't need nullable. But I still think it's important to include because it communicates to your team, to other developers, to yourself in the future that this was an intentional decision to say, you know what, this field is not required all the time. Sometimes it's going to be there. When it is there, it has to be a string and it can't be longer than 255 characters. But if it's not present at all, or if it's present and has an empty string or a null, it's okay. That's fine. That is a conscious decision versus if I just see this, it's like, well, did they forget to put required in there? It's just a very simple communication thing that I like to do to make it crystal clear what exactly I'm expecting in my validated payload. So hopefully you find that useful. And if you've not ever thought about testing validation in this way, I think you'd like it. It takes a little bit getting used to. And like one of the complaints is like, well, I'm writing a lot of tests. Yet you are, but they give you a lot of confidence that your code is working. If, these are simple rules, right? String, max 255. But when you get into like required if or required unless, or you have custom rules, this is where like having validation logic tested is a huge benefit. So I highly recommend it. One last thing I want to share is, would you like to have your code reviewed by me? The reason I ask is because we just launched a brand new code review service over at Mastering Laravel. So take a look if you're interested in that. If you want a little peace of mind or you want some direction on how to improve your code, go to masteringlaravel.io/code review, and Aaron and myself will review your code and give you a clear direction.